Jumbo, I'm Ayuma, the story coach.
Jumbo, I'm Ayuma, the money coach.
Together, we bring you Her Money Story Africa,
a podcast where we are humanizing African women's money stories.
We believe every African woman knows something about money that she could teach or learn. Grab your drinks and snacks and let's talk money the African woman style.
Remember to subscribe to our podcast and share it with a friend.
Hey sis, Ayuma here. Today's money story is by me, and I'm from Nairobi in Kenya. And I talk about periods and money. So enjoy my story and look out for Ayuma's money tool and our reaction to this episode. The following story contains audio content that touches on mental illness. Listener discretion is advised. I must have been in my early 20s, and at this time, I was actually out of school. And I remember it's because I didn't have school fees. So I had to stay out of school for quite some time. And also, my family was experiencing some serious financial challenges, hence why I was home. But also, I'd been job hunting for 3 whole years and had not found work. And I remember very well during this time, I was struggling with depression. And so there's one morning I woke up, I was just in my bed looking at the ceiling. And to be honest, I was feeling so useless. And I was feeling like my days are just wasting away because imagine 3 whole years not getting a job, not being able to go to school in uni. I felt so paralyzed. And so I noticed something this particular morning, and I'd actually started my period. And so, I just woke up from bed, went to the closet to look for my sanitary pads. And to my surprise, I didn't find any. So I just decided to look into my wallet to see if I can just get some cash, go across the street, and to buy a packet of sanitary pads from a shop, those Coca Cola shops that are always in the estate. But to my surprise, again, I did not find a single coin, at least enough to buy me a packet of sanitary pads. At that time, it was like 50 shillings, which is equal to like half a dollar. And in disbelief, I couldn't believe what was actually happening. I started going around the house. When you go for shopping and sometimes some change normally remains. So I started going around the house looking for some spare change around the house. And again, to my surprise, I did not find enough money that totaled to 50 shillings to buy me a packet of pads. I tell you, going back to my room, I was still in disbelief. I was like, how can I not afford sanitary pads? So I still went back into my wallet to check again, like for real, am I really out of cash? And like a huge slap, it actually was true. Neither did I find any money in my wallet, and neither did I find any money around the house. But then again, how could I find money in the house? You are going through a financial time and you just don't find change anywhere, right? So I remember just feeling so embarrassed. I felt so, to be honest, I felt useless. And I remember just flashes of different scenarios of women in my family running through my head. I thought of my grandmother and how quickly she plunged into poverty as soon as my grandfather died because the men in the village came and took her land. They took away all of her properties because they believed a widow doesn't have the right to own so many things, my grandfather used to be a chief, but as soon as he died, it's as though my mom and my grandmother, they were all reduced to nothing. I remember my cousins who were married off to random men as soon as they failed their high school examinations. It's either if they didn't do well, they would just be married off so that they can now, sort of like financially provide for their families. I also remember some of my aunts who married men who literally blocked them from pursuing their careers. And they just literally stayed home, some of them going through a lot of GBVs, a lot of just violence, and all because they didn't have their own money. And I remember feeling so stuck. And so I decided to humble myself and, go ask my mom. It was really embarrassing, but I just went into my mother's room, humbled myself, and I asked her, Mom, I've started my periods. I don't have enough money for pads. Um, please help me with 50 shillings to buy me pads. I remember she was really, really shocked and she was deeply disturbed. Actually, she was, you know, how mothers normally take their children's challenges and failures as their own. I didn't want to, she was already going through so much, but I didn't want to add an extra burden. And I knew for a fact that I added an extra burden. So she helped me out with the cash. She was happy to help, but I could tell she was not so happy because of the situation I was in. But, you know, it afforded me what I needed at that time. So, period sorted. I went, got the pads, sorted it out. And I went back into my room and I sat down on the same bed. And I remember feeling resolute that this would never, ever happen again. I'd never, ever wanted to be in the same situation. But then I thought, how did I get here? And how did I get to this place where I literally, as a woman, could not afford myself sanitary towels? Like, seriously, this is the one thing as an adult, at least, or a young adult, I should be able to sort of provide for myself as a thing of dignity, right? But how did I get here? And I remember I realized that throughout my life, I'd actually had a very sort of passive relationship with money. I used to think that I needed to first go to school, and then after clearing school, I would get a job. After getting a job, then that's how I would get money. But that's just not how life is. And I thought about like women that I really deeply admire, like Oprah, Lisa Nichols, Viola Davis. But all of these women know what it's like to be broke and broken, right? Just the way I was feeling. But they got out of it. But the thing that they did is that they didn't feel like victims. They took charge of the situation. They were really intentional about money. And I realized that's exactly what I needed to do. That money, when you respect it, it respects you. And I needed to really have an intentional relationship with money. I needed to confront my limited attitude and mindset that I had with money and to stop thinking like it will just show up someday. And that is the day that I decided to actually build a healthy relationship with money, to respect it so that it respects me, and also to start creating room for it through building my financial knowledge, through actually being intentional about things like budgeting, but also to stop thinking like I'm a victim, to instead know that I'm a victor, that I could rise up from this situation by doing something. And all along, in my hands, I had skills. So, and when I look back, that's when I think when I became very intentional about money without necessarily waiting to go through school, finish my degree, and then get a job. That's actually when my journey into serious entrepreneurship started. And now I actually run a social enterprise called Let's, which I've been running for almost a decade now, where I'm empowering women leaders from all around the world. As of this year, this November, it will be more than 1,000 actually global women leaders using their stories to create opportunities, be it businesses or actual leadership careers, and using them to build their brands. If it wasn't for me taking charge of my money story, I wouldn't be in the position to enable other women to create money using their own stories. This episode is brought to you by Let's Leading Through Story. Do you wear many hats as a woman leader? Do you need an experienced brand storytelling coach to help you find synergy with your multiple interests through a clear and structured brand story? Partner today with award-winning story coach, consultant, and trained journalist Ayuma Michelle. For about a decade, Ayuma has amplified and structured brand stories for over 1,000 global women leaders across 5 continents, from Wall Street women, international fashion designers, corporate managers transitioning to consulting, and stay-at-home mothers launching new businesses. She's also the story coach behind her Money Story Africa episodes. Book now your complimentary 45-minute discovery call with Ayuma on our show notes. Learn more about Ayuma and her work on Instagram at Ayuma_Michelle or her website www.letsfindyourstory.com.
Wow, Ayuma, thank you so much for sharing that story.
Yeah.
How do you feel like talking about that part in that season of your life, and the role that money played at that point.
I felt honestly, it took a lot of vulnerability.
Yeah.
You'd think that, oh, because I've been a story coach and this is what I do for a living, that I would be, like it'd just be like a walk in the park.
Yeah.
But it really, really took a lot of strength. But I'm so glad it's finally out.
Yeah.
The first time I actually shared this story was during a training for the Moth main stage.
Yeah.
And it was a masterclass. And I just remember I was literally sweating
Yeah.
much as I was preparing for
can
it,
imagine.
But I think the fact that I've practiced it, but also I'm proud to share this because I can only imagine women out there who are possibly going through the same thing. Because, periods is sort of like a taboo topic, taboo topic. And then people don't realize that periods is not, like on TV, when people talk about periods, you think of, the girls in Masai Mara who can't afford a pad and stuff. And not to take away from them, but periods poverty affects even women in the city. It also affects women with jobs. It also affects women in maybe marriages where they can't access the kind of help that they need. And something that I'm just thinking about is, you can imagine, I had my mom. At least I had my mom.
Right.
So you can imagine the ladies who don't have
anyone.
Yeah, they don't have anyone.
Yeah.
And now it makes sense to me, the kind of stories we keep hearing about in the media of girls going to trade themselves, their bodies for pads, their teachers, the boda guys, And even I remember there's a time I was in Burundi, then there's this lady called Francoise. She runs a program that helps girls with pads. She told me that girls in Burundi, especially Bujumbura, they were using sand.
What?
Yeah, they were using sand, that sometimes even the police take advantage of them. They are active in the sex trade and stuff. So I just learned that, oh my goodness, and the reason why I'm so proud that finally we are doing this with you and I get to share this story with you, it's because you're my money coach, right?
Yeah.
You're my money coach.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm so glad that I'm sharing this with you and we get to talk about this is because money is very emotional.
It is.
And there are various things that keep pushing us. So people might see me doing all of these things, but they don't know at the back of my money story, the thing that really pushed me and informed me is periods.
Absolutely.
It's how I needed to confront my situation with my periods and my money.
Yeah.
But also you can just imagine, by the time a girl starts her first periods, I'm honestly thinking that financial literacy should go hand in hand with girls being taught about periods, because if you don't know that, by the way, this is something that can empower you, or that maybe the world around you, people can actually take advantage of, you can literally get into a place where you feel so powerless. And people around you who are supposed to be maybe your protectors might actually use that to your disadvantage.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's so important. And I'm so honored to do this with you.
Absolutely. I keep imagining, okay, so I like that idea of, having financial literacy with your first period, because actually we need to know that this is an additional cost that is coming into your life, because
especially
people
as
like
Kenyans with the taxation and
exactly
stuff.
actually, which is interesting, because I was going to bring up this whole issue of pink tax. You've heard of pink tax?
Yes.
Yeah. So the idea that it's not like an actual government tax, but it's the money that we often have to pay because of feminine products. The cost of goods of the products that are usually marketed to women, and pads are marketed to women, and there are products that are generally considered tax free. They're not taxed. There's no like custom or VAT on them, because they are considered like essential products, And for a long time, pads were not considered essential products, And even we should be thankful that in Kenya, it's one of the products that has been made VAT free. And so ideally, with the idea that it's supposed to reduce the cost related to acquiring a sanitary pad. But generally, the thing that the thing that blows my mind is the idea that it's not considered an essential product, you
Yeah.
know, and to some extent, it actually can ruin your budget to a great extent if you're not
Yes.
prepared, if you don't know where the money is coming from, and
Yeah.
all those things, and all other products that are surrounding this particular issue that we all share as women.
Yeah. And you can imagine that's pads for me specifically for my periods as a young girl. You can imagine what it's like for there's also pads that older women use. There are also pads that women who are pregnant, they've just given birth, they use.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many. There even just different, and that's just pads.
Yeah.
There's so many other products that women use for their periods that are urgently needed. I know, like, for example, menstrual cups have come through.
Yeah.
But, because of the status quo and the, taboo, still in Kenya, some parents are so worried about the virginity of their daughters. They're like, hey, tampons where? Menstrual cup where? You're going to break the hymen. The daughter will not be marketable in this. It's just so weird, and yet there's no product like that is on the other side for men, which people are like, oh my gosh, are we worried about the virginity of our sons? Will they be marketable? Will they be whatever? There's nothing like that. So it's just incredible how just pads alone as an expense, but also as an investment, can literally bring a woman or girl down. In fact, in Kenya, I think the numbers share that it's 1 in 10 girls actually drop out of school when she starts her periods. So literally that's an entire future just because there isn't an expense or something that can help her manage her periods. And you can imagine how many girls we've lost along the way. Maybe even the president of this country, we would have had a president in this country by now. But I'm honestly seeing the correlation even in leadership.
Yeah.
Because if pads can cost you going to school, it just reaches a point where your parents say, no, let's marry you off so that we can get dowry, we get the cows, and that's how you'll support us. And that's your future,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of school, I'm trying to imagine, I'm really racking my brain to remember the high school years and how that entire experience of being in your periods and pads, and I'm really trying to remember some key things, events that happened when I was in, especially when you're in a boarding school, a girls' boarding school. Well, I don't know about a mixed boarding school. I'm sure that also has its own dynamics. But did you find that when you're in high school, like the topic, because some people even start their periods when they're in high school, for example. Do you have any stories that stood out for you when you're in high school around your periods?
In high school, I can't even remember being on my periods in high school. Like it was such a breeze. But the one I remember was just before we joined high school. There's a girl who actually started her periods in class. And it was like, oh my goodness, the whole class knew, everyone knew. It was crazy because the transition from high school was because I was in a private primary school, and then I went into secondary school that is not national, but they used to call them what? Provincial.
Yes, provincial.
So I just think the dynamics was so different. So in primary school, the director of our school, she was so well informed. I mean, it's Dr. Okello. And you could literally walk into her office and tell her, hey, Daktari, there's something that's happened to me. Do you know she literally took the girls' dresses, took her through laundry, took care of you. The girls were sorted. She'd
That's
give
amazing.
you pads, she'd give you tea and cookies, and she'd sort you out.
That's
Imagine,
exactly what you need.
only for us to go into the ghetto in high school. Oh my goodness. Do you know, it's like, nyinyi ni wanawake, you are women, you take
should
care
know.
of yourselves, you should know. And imagine there were girls in this school who are coming from Turkana. There are girls who'd never used toothpaste in their lives. There are girls who were never, these soaps, you remember the way far soap was the thing, they couldn't comprehend even some of them using soap. And then you're expecting them to know how to use a pad. So I realized that in some way, some of us, much as we were still girls and growing, we needed to sort of mother other girls who didn't know how to use toothpaste, who didn't used to know how to use a pad, because pads also come with underwear. Some of these girls, For the first time, they were using underwears.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you needed to imagine teaching somebody who's your age how to use underwear,
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's your age how to, put on the pad, and that really goes a long way into somebody's lives. Those women right now are doing exceptionally well, but I can only imagine the vulnerability just because your own mother never knew this thing. Maybe their mothers are the ones who are using the sand, the ash, all of these things. And now the girl has come to school and now she's being taught there's a new dignified way of doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in some way, I'm so glad some of these girls made it,
Yeah.
and that we all got to share. It's like a community of
Exactly.
women, and we share each other and in the knowledge.
That's exactly what I was thinking about, because I find that it would be so much easier for somebody, a girl who now starts her period when she's in high school, when she knows that she's around other girls. Let's hopefully.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I keep think, because I have to bring in the money aspect. When you run out of your pocket money, and the first thing we often think about is, oh, my Grab is over. Like now I don't have money for Grab. But now if that pocket money was also meant to cover like your pads and your sanitary pads and things like that, like I remember we used to, the borrowing amongst each other was so common, and it was such, for me, I found it to be a safe space, just because I was in a girls' boarding school, and like we just generally understand each other. But there's also that disparity of, when people think about pads projects and things like that, we also take it in outside of Nairobi and things like that, assuming that schools within Nairobi, they don't have such problems.
Imagine.
But it's possible that there are
They
people
do.
struggling out here. And the idea of even having a pad bank or something like that within a school where somebody knows that if I've run out, then I can go to the so-and-so office or the counselor's office or something like that and be able to get something to push me through until the end of the term is something that I think it's worth exploring.
Yeah. And I think it was beautiful, especially in my high school. We used to have the school matron who used to be there for girls who don't necessarily have the funds. So they would go there. But also us as the girls in school, we were told, hey, if you would like to donate to the pad bank or whatever, it could even be sweaters, it could be oil, toothpaste, whatever it is, you could actually contribute. So that is when I got introduced to, even while in high school, just the reality of, hey, you have it better than many others. And so it is your responsibility to also take care of the women around you by giving some of what you have. And it's true. I believe that just the way you say pad banks, it should go hand in hand with financial literacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if we are not preparing these girls to be financially literate, they'll go into a world which uses women and sees women as cash cows. So it's like a protection. It covers you with dignity. And to be honest, there's no dignity in not having cash.
Absolutely.
There's no dignity at all in being broke, especially as a woman. So I'm so honored that, I got to learn that, but also from a young age, I got to learn about the power of giving back, especially when it comes to taking care of period poverty, sorting out the fellow women around me so that they can feel covered.
Yeah. Can you think of other costs that come with periods? Like apart from buying a pad, do you have other costs that are financial that are linked to you going through your period? I know, let me say, for me personally, I used to have very bad cramps that necessitated painkillers. To date, I have to take a painkiller. And that's actually, every time I have to buy one, I'm like, man, this could be money that I could even buy a bag of fries. I mean, better fries than meds, But I'm thinking about in totality. I know we're talking about you trying to buy pads, but what could be other costs that women have to take on just because that you're going through your period?
Yeah, I think apart from medication, there's other things that we don't often notice, like let's say tissue. Tissue. There's also water. Pads and water, periods and water just goes hand in hand. And also underwears. Underwears, like if you don't have the right one, it could really mess you up.
Yeah.
And even just good nutrition. When you're going through your period, you urgently need some nutrition. Things like getting back that iron, getting back the stuff that your body is losing. As your body is cleaning itself, you need good nutrition during this time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm sure somebody somewhere is listening. I'm like, that was me,
Yeah.
a
And
month
please
ago.
let us know. Like
Yeah,
if some of these things that we're actually sharing with you,
yeah.
please let us know. Share with us on social media, and even
Mm-hmm.
just let us know like what is actually hitting home. As you're listening to us share this story, I know it takes a lot of vulnerability. If you want to, just hide your name or whatever, we welcome it. But as long as we're hearing, we want to hear from you, ladies. What are some of the period stories, period and money stories
Yeah.
that you have? We'd like to expound on them. And who knows, we might actually be able to create an actual platform for us to talk more about this.
Yeah, let us know if you have any additional costs that we might not. I know people tend to. I was convinced at one point to get a bottle. What are those called? The hot water bottle.
Yeah,
That's an expense
that's
that
an
I would
expense.
not necessarily have thought
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
without necessarily thinking about periods.
Hmm.
If there's any other costs associated with periods and whether it's your first one or ongoing, please let us know in the comments as well, so that we can put this all in consideration of the topic that we have today.
Yeah.
Hey sis, Auma here. Now, having listened to Ayuma's story, one of the things you'll realize that she says is that that experience that she went through was it was a significant turning point of her relationship with money, and the importance that she placed in having money to access what we consider to be basic needs, basic necessities. And for a lot of us, we actually, if you look back, if you consider your life, your history, your financial history, you can probably trace a period in your time or an experience that you had, a specific experience that you're like, where this one, when it happened, it turned everything around in how I look at money and how I look at accessibility of money and the need of money. And this is what the psychologists tie to the idea of financial trauma. These are significant experiences that you go through, after which your response to them has an impact on your behavior towards your finances. How you deal with your money, how you behave around your finances can be traced to particular turning points in your life. So for Ayuma, it was this particular experience that she went through. And it's an important thing that you need to go through, or you need to be able to take yourself through self inquiry in order to identify what was that experience for me. Because what happens if you don't, you start having certain behaviors around money and you're like, why are you like that? Or people who don't know you or who don't think like that or who don't behave like that don't understand what your behavior is rooted on. So it's important for you to have that sense of awareness, that sense of consciousness that these are key experiences in my life that influenced how I deal with money. Now it can affect you negatively, like it can result in negative behaviors with your money, or it could result in positive behaviors with your money. But ultimately, looking for somebody who has a healthy relationship with money, it's important for you to identify what are some of the experiences in my life that could have caused and resulted in some sort of financial trauma. So because her money story is awesome like that, we are offering a free tool that you can use to do that self inquiry. Some top questions that you can ask yourself in order to kind of unplug what could have been buried in the recesses of your mind. Could have been such a traumatic experience that your mind has actually completely blocked it, completely forgotten about it. But you want to bring it up if you're trying to understand your relationship with money and move towards a more healthier relationship with money. And that is the financial history worksheet. This is a tool that I actually use with my clients, and it helps them to unearth their relationship with money. It's not the complete tool, but it's good enough to actually get you started thinking on the right track. The financial history worksheet will have about 4 or 5 questions that will help you to start digging deep into your history in order to identify particular instances or particular experiences that you went through that were a significant turning point towards your relationship with money. Now, how I want you to use this tool is, first of all, we provide it in our show notes. Then go to the link, download it, and take some time to yourself. Imagine that you are sitting next to those long couches in a therapy office. Imagine that you are going through that, and make some time, create some time for yourself. Doesn't have to be a lot of time, but maybe 30 minutes or so. Sit with yourself and think through the questions that are going to be on that piece of paper. Nice if you can download and write on it, but if you also have a notebook, take a minute, write the question, and then write your responses to those questions. It's gonna cause you or require you to be introspective. A lot of us find that difficult, but it's necessary in order to unearth some of the things that we are talking about today. If you have particular instances, just like that the one that Ayuma has just shared with us, and think about how has this experience influenced and affected my relationship with money. Is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? If it is negative, how can I move towards a healthier relationship with money? So check out our show notes for the downloadable tool that you can use, and let us know how helpful or otherwise it has been to your relationship with money. Thank you.
Did you love today's episode? Share it with a friend and stay tuned for more stories. Subscribe now to our podcast and follow us on our socials on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Her Money Story Africa.